Hello, friends. Welcome back to the While We're Waiting Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Jill Sullivan, your host and one of the co-founders of the While We're Waiting ministry. This is a podcast of stories of devastating loss and grief and heartbreak and struggle, and stories of hope and healing and faith and, yes, even joy. Underlying every conversation is the hope we have in Jesus Christ, which makes it possible to not just survive the loss of a child, but to live well while we're waiting to see them again in heaven one day. You can learn more about our ministry and the free bereaved parent retreats we host by visiting our website at www.whilewe'rewaiting.org. Welcome to episode number 275. We are returning today to my conversation with Julie South. In the first part of our time together, we got to know her daughter Bellah, her joyful spirit, her tender heart, and the way her short life left such a lasting impact. We also heard about the many challenges of her medical journey and the faith that carried Julie and her family through those difficult days. In the second part of our conversation, Julie opens up about the years that followed Bellah's homegoing, including the impact of PTSD and what healing has looked like over time. She talks about surrender, not as a quick solution, but as a slow, ongoing process of trusting God in the midst of questions and pain. We'll reflect on how grief has evolved nearly 6 years after Bellah's homegoing, and why simple anchors, scripture set to song, the quiet glow of a Christmas tree in October, and the promise that the best is yet to come have steadied her heart. Julie also shares a word for moms and dads in the earliest days of loss, when it's hard to even catch your breath. He will hold you fast. We close with a discussion about the new While We're Waiting support group she and her husband are preparing to host in Winter Garden, Florida. It's exciting to think about what God has in store for that. This conversation is tender, honest, and filled with reminders that even in the darkest places, God continues to hold us fast. Was there a particular time or event that you kind of felt like this was the turning point in your PTSD journey? Was there something that it was a specific turning point, or was it just gradual?
It was, I'd say it was probably gradual. I have to say that in this place where this was my battle was also my heart as a mom, and God did sustain me to be present. It was obviously hard for my girls to know what I was experiencing. And it was very difficult for everyone, but I was also in the details of their lives. And I was also pressing in, probably in ways that I shouldn't have been pressing in because of my worry and fear for them and just knowing the pain that they were walking. So I was constantly moving through and doing, and even on the anniversary of Bellah going to heaven, it was this just urgency, which probably came somewhat from PTSD and somewhat from anxiety, but of just needing to recognize that day and outwardly use it to bless the hospital teams that sustained us so beautifully, palliative care teams, but also for the community's sake. So the Lord used different things along the way in that gradual progression, I would say. And at some point, it became less reacting and fighting the anxiety of it, and more of being able to be still. And not be still in the sense of, oh, I just be still and have quiet time with God. It was be still in the real sense of knowing that I'm surrounded by armies I cannot see and God is fighting for me. And it doesn't mean it's going to end quickly, but it was just that place. And in that place, I've often articulated it like you're taking one breath at a time. You're in dark after dark after dark. And then eventually it was, I'm in an hour at a time, and then I'm at a day at a time, and then I'm at a week at a time, and then I'm in all of that probably came gradually. But it also was a response in me. It became that like God showing me, okay, you're here. And of course you don't want to move, but I've gotten you to here. So I need you to be willing to do this next thing. And it was often big things. And probably the biggest for me was in 2023, when I realized it was time for me, despite how I felt and I had been avoidant of it all, even though I'd been passionate about it before, of stepping into the space of the hospital with some doctors that I knew my heart and had journeyed with us, to share a little bit more of the story. And that was how I was honoring Bellah, and to present it in a way that says, just hear this, because for the sake of another mom like me, who in many ways was sitting there after 3 years because of the trauma, that it could make a difference. And walking in that hospital and sitting in that room and all that it took to prepare was tremendously overwhelming. But it was also this place where I walked out and said, all right, Lord, that's yours too. And so it was moments like that of just saying yes and following despite the tremendous pain that I saw. I was able to see more clearly where God could reveal to me the places where I'd been, where I'd come from, and where I still had to go, but that he was showing, and I've sustained you yet again. You will make it.
Yes. Yes. And what I keep hearing you say, and what I'm understanding or kind of grasping from what you're saying, is the concept of surrender.
Yes.
And you talk about that a little bit in your blog, is coming to a place of surrender. So what did surrender look like for you, and why is it important to reach that point?
Woo, that's a loaded one.
That's a loaded question.
And it's come for me over time. I could go back and say, beginning when I went through infertility to Michaela's journey, like there's so many layers, and it's a continuous journey, and I feel like it will be until eternity. So I would say back then, like even in Michaela's journey before Bella's, like, oh, I really felt like the Lord had shown me this new place of surrender. And here I am again in this bigger place. So there's that. Bella's story and where her story went obviously took me to a place of seeing it in a whole new way. I think to give the clearest picture, I have to go back to, there was a moment a couple of years before transplant where Bellah was in a very incredibly difficult position medically. There were so many unknowns. Michaela was struggling medically, and I had medical struggles at the time. And it was hard, and it felt the overwhelming place of, I'm not going to be able to hold these. And what happens if something's wrong with me and I can't do this? And I would walk and I would listen to worship music. And at one point I was in a small group and we prayed Zephaniah 3:17, which is, the Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty warrior who saves. It goes on to say, like, he does not rebuke you, but he rejoices over you with singing. It was just this picture, but I had never focused on that verse. And I thought, why is this hitting me so hard? Like, what is this? And the next day I was in an eye exam getting my eyes dilated, and the Lord just flooded me with this picture. And so I sat out there having had the drops in my eyes, frantically writing down what he was showing me. And I couldn't even see at that point. So I just kept writing it, and I would go back and read it. And it was this picture, like in my mind, of him leaning down, like bigger than I can even visually see, and lifting me. It's like that image of, like, Deuteronomy 33:27, like the everlasting arms holding you. And it was like I could do nothing but sit in awe and just feel his enveloping love and mercy and sovereign protection in ways. It was just that, like, I could only see him. And in that moment, I actually wrote that I felt like I knew nothing else. Like, he held me away. And it was all of that was my panic, of the girls, of Scott, of what happens. I didn't even know where it was. I couldn't see it. It didn't exist. And it was just this moment of, like, this is where you need to sit. Like, I'm here, surrender to here, and know that truth, and I will provide. And afterward, I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to lose this moment, because I know I'm going to get going and it's going to be gone. But the Lord carried it in me through all of the darkness that was ahead, to the point in transplant of a night where I felt like I could lose my girls' relationships, in ways my marriage, Bella's diagnosis, and I did not know if she would get home. The diagnosis said she may not ever get home from transplant. And I fell to my knees in that room. And I remember thinking of the disciples, like, is this what it felt like? Like when he's like, drop everything and follow me. And it's like, Lord, I've followed you. I have followed you. I have followed you. I've surrendered. I didn't want any of this. I watched my child suffer. I've watched my family split. And I sat there and I fell to my knees. Bella had been sick, so sick. And she was in the bed breathing fast, and I was alone. And I just cried out. And I said, God, I can't. And I believe, help my unbelief. And I know you're enough. If you take it all, I know you're enough. You showed me that. There's no greater surrender than that place. And then I got up and I laid over Bellah and I prayed that God would just, it's funny, go back to pray her home, that he would just allow her to go home, that we would have memories that would be in our home with her. And I walked out of that moment to what would come ahead. And it was a battle in that word surrender later to have to sit in awe of him and say, the miracle we wanted of our family being able to hold this girl and heal her and move her through life, and God would do this, did not come, nor did the miracle of even years to come. That was not our miracle, and that's not always the miracle. But what God gave us in the surrender was this assurance of who he is, of the truth of the gospel, of his presence, of his compassion, of him in the garden crying out, of the fact that I'm understood in ways that I can't ever understand. And surrender is to the place of those everlasting arms, the assurance of my faith made sight and the hope of eternity.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you for that. So encouraging. So Bellah went home to heaven on August 20th, 2019. And as we're having this conversation, you are approaching the 6-year mark since that day. How do you feel like your grief has evolved over that time? I know your grief was probably somewhat postponed, maybe because of the PTSD. Talk about that experience.
Yes. And that was a hard part of the journey, is this wrestle for me verbally of like, wait, I haven't grieved yet. No, probably some of this was grief. Wait, and what it looked like for us as a family and all of those spaces. And then specifically for Scott and I, because in that place, we didn't really walk together, and he had grief, but he had done it back here, and here I was. And in ways I felt like I almost had to advocate for myself. Like I would beat myself up because I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel this so deeply. But then it's like, a counselor would remind me like, but you haven't really felt that. Like you, it's okay. Like there's no timeline, as everybody says, but in this, and then it became a wrestle too with the Lord. Like, well, wait, so now I have to walk fully into grief. So I'm still in ways still there. It's interesting because even this year, it's 2 days from now, and my heart has been immersed in memories. And just this year, like Lord has been showing me more of the space of where he met us in that, and the sacred holiness of the journey and depths of Bellah and my deep connection and all of it in ways that are new and ways that just leave me shaking, leave me in tears, leave me overwhelmed. And it's so hard and yet it's beautiful. And so I'd say I'm in a new season of grief. Sure. One that has a willingness to go forward. And one where I've moved enough in the healing from the anxious anticipation of what I may encounter, because that kept me from grief. So I could not even go into spaces of her things because of the memories and triggers I thought would come. So it was this feeling of, I won't make it through it. I won't survive if I go there. So now it is this hurts, but I need to press in. And for me, a lot of things that, and again, there's no right or wrong. And there's people that haven't had PTSD that are still sitting in decisions of rooms and things. And so that's been me, frozen in a lot of ways. And as a family, okay in that, I think everybody's, holding everyone's grief in that space. But now I am saying, all right, Lord, show me, lead me. I trust you're going to hold me in this place too. So that's kind of where I am in the now.
Mm-hmm. That willingness to move forward is huge.
Just to face it. It's a big step. Yeah. And not that I haven't been grieving. It's just there's a difference in I'm encountering as it comes, and Lord, take me there, because this matters. Like this is a beautiful part of my child and my walk. And I know it's a beautiful part of your love and mercy and kindness towards me. So walk with me there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what advice would you have for that mom who might be listening today, who is at the very beginning of her grief journey, maybe just in the early days, weeks, months? What would you say to her?
I think what sits the heaviest on my heart in that place, knowing there's no words for that place, really. You can even giving advice is hard because it's such a profoundly dark and difficult place, but it's the words, he will hold you fast. It was one of the first songs that were put in front of me by a mom who had lost a child, and it was, he will hold me fast. And it's a desperate cry. It's just in the dark when you cannot see, he will hold you fast. When you feel you're falling and you're going to shatter and you will not make it, he will hold you fast. And it's just, he will hold you. He will hold you. He will hold you. And you will not feel like it. But it's just that reminder, just that cry. He will hold you fast. He will hold you secure. For me, as a mom who's walked it, my heart and what I feel when I encounter moms and what I continuously want to say, even through a text as I'm sending it, is, hey, you're in my heart today. You're being held. You're seen. You're not alone. He's holding you fast because I know what I wanted to hear, what I felt like I needed to hear, the desperation. And it wasn't always there, but it's like, no advice, no nothing. You're not alone. I know this is impossible. You're being held. You are seen. It's okay. You're not alone. And so it's just to trust in that place that eventually, as he's holding you fast, it will not be that dark, but he will keep holding you fast.
Oh, that is so powerful. Thank you for that. One of the things I saw on your blog that intrigued me is that you put up your Christmas tree in October. Yes. I don't know if you do that every year, if that's a tradition that you've continued.
Yes.
Tell us why. Why would you put your Christmas tree up in October?
Right. It's funny. And when I try to explain it, looking back, I would say, well, everybody in the family gets excited about that. And there's always that debate. Do you do it before Thanksgiving? Do you do it on Thanksgiving? Do you do it the 1st of December? And so we always were around Thanksgiving, or just after Thanksgiving we would. But as Bellah came into our home in December, the week before Christmas. And one of our first experiences as a family is she came to our house on Thanksgiving Day or right before Thanksgiving Day, actually, it was the week before. And we put the tree up specifically for that. And we put lights on it. We didn't have everything out, but we played music. We played some of our favorite Christmas songs and worship. And we had a few ornaments. And so we have a video of her hanging, a cross. And she'd say, "Cross for Jesus." And it was this just profound first connection piece was around that tree. And then, so every year it was a place where she learned connection, and she sat literally in the awe of Jesus being born. So when she was listed for transplant in that year, we knew she was very sick. It had been almost 11 months. It had been 10 months at that point. And we knew I was feeling that urgency build in me that we could get the call any day. And it just hit me in the dark of night when I was struggling deeply, and God was just, you're approaching Christmas, and he was reminding me, I don't know, it just came to me with the lights and that light in the darkness. And so I remember waking up the next morning and saying, we've got to put up our Christmas tree. It was like the world around us. It was Halloween and, fall and all this stuff. And it was like, no, we're going to put up the tree. And so we got our family together and we put it up and we turned on music and we decorated the tree. And we have a moment where Bellah pictures where she was sitting on a ladder with her body slumped over. And we were looking at the tree, face to face with it. And we were all singing, and she had stopped singing. And I walked up to her and put my arms around her. And I said, "What's going on?" And she was face to face. She was face to face with one of our family ornaments that have all the names on them. And it was little snowmen. And she had tears. And she was saying, "I just love my family. I just love my family. I love being here." And then she went and laid on the couch and she just looked at everybody. And it was just, you feel that depth of her, that grasp of understanding. And so that was it. And then the lights went off, and there was, there she was with pictures standing in the glow of the lights. And then for me, it became my comfort, him being the light in the darkness. The darkness cannot overcome it. And it carried us through that month. And then when we got the call to transplant, it was Thanksgiving night. So for us, we experienced that together because the Lord led to that moment. Obviously, our tree was up in August because families came around and decorated for Christmas because it's what Bellah didn't want to miss. So our tree stayed up the whole next year until March. And then we basically, ever since then, every year it's October. We need the tree up. Not for any reason, but it's just such a beautiful, comforting presence of God. in the midst of our continued healing and darkness. And it just points us to the joy and the remembered joy in Bella's heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I wanted you to share that because so many bereaved parents, as we both know, really struggle with the holidays.
Yes.
And to think about putting your tree up in October rather than during that very emotional period of the Christmas season, exactly, where the focus is on the light of the world, Jesus, the whole purpose, the whole reason for Christmas. I love that idea. And we may start incorporating that in our family because I just think that's so special.
And we didn't even put ornaments. We didn't do all the things that felt too hard for everybody because it just, even the girls, it was just, but it's God, it may have felt hard at the same time, but it was like when you went to bed at night, when you woke up in the morning, it was a place where I could sit in my trauma. I could sit in all of it.
Yes.
And I could remember, but I could also just feel held. I was definitely held there by the arms of the Lord.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that idea. We have a dear friend of the While We're Waiting ministry she's now in heaven with her son, Matt, but she loved the phrase, the best is yet to come. And I know that phrase has significance to you as well. Talk about that.
Yes. It was very hard for me at first. It was one of those phrases you just know everybody uses, like for weddings and joyous things. And but in July of 2019, so just a month and a half before Bellah went to heaven, we were able to do a family beach trip it was the desire of Bella's heart. It was what she'd waited for. And she'd been in the hospital and doctors made it happen. Her entire family came together, including her great-grandmother. And we went to that beach, but we were under this tremendous weight at the time of still fighting for healing. And so we were on the phone with palliative care teams, with doctors, with results, with people in the Netherlands, somebody that was trying to get a compassionate use of a medication. It was just, we were living and breathing that anything could happen at any moment. And we were, she was in a bubble because something could happen while we were there because of her low platelets. So we were in that. And at one point we went to this gift shop. She was with Scott back at the place, and I was with my great grandmother and my mom, and we were looking around, and I was just trying to breathe. And I'm at the counter and I look over, and behind the counter is a clock, and it was so pretty. It caught my eye. But then I read the words and it said, "The best is yet to come," on the clock. And I remember freezing, literally freezing, just my heart racing, because it just slammed me with this place of like, Lord, like everything we're walking in says she's not going to survive. And we're scared right now of what could happen any moment. And it just, I couldn't have the two could not match up for me. And yet I remember saying to my mom, like, oh my goodness, that clock. But I didn't explain it, and she ended up buying it. And so it ended up sitting in the beach cottage, and we ended up getting home with it. And in the months through PTSD, there it was hanging on my wall. And it honestly at times triggered trauma, and I couldn't look at it. And for 2 years, God kept bringing it back to me, just saying, you're going to get here. You're going to see it. And it was through very hard memories, through having relived trauma. But ultimately, it was this beautiful place where I had to say, there's no best yet to come in what my baby is walking through and what my family's experiencing. And how can her leaving this planet, leaving our arms, be the best? Like, there's nothing best in that.
Right.
But ultimately, it was the eyes being lifted up beyond just here to say, home, that place of the joy and the hope and the perfection of eternity, and that it is the best yet to come. And so Bellah is in that. She's already gotten there. She's experienced the best. And that is the best for us because of the cross, because of the death and resurrection of Jesus. Because we have eternity, we're reconciled to God. There is a best yet to come. And so it was the Lord leading me to frame my story and find the actual peace and comfort in that, though I don't want it to be the story.
Right.
But it was this, and then it became how God was holding me in the now to feel that and know that I can say with joy, the best is yet to come. While he was simultaneously holding me back then in that gift shop, in my panic and despair and screaming in my mind, no, Lord, there's no best yet to come in the story. And the two came together in a beautiful picture.
Mm-hmm. As we've been talking, there are so many instances where I can just see God working in your story. You know, sometimes I think you are aware of them, sometimes not. And he has been so faithful to you through your journey. I know that doesn't make it easier.
No.
It's still a very painful journey. But I love how God works in our lives in ways that we're not even aware of it most of the time. But then when we look back, we can see it. And I just see that all through your story.
I would love to share a little story just on that, because it just hit me how,
please.
That first Christmas that we had Bella, one of our first ambulance rides, she had kind of become unresponsive due to electrolyte issues. So we had to call an ambulance. We'd only had her for like a week. I went into full panic because I'm like, I don't know enough. I'm not equipped. And we're sitting out in the ambulance and the EMT pricks her heel to try to get a response. And when we got a subtle response, and we both kind of just, we sighed this sigh of relief. And then after a minute, he was asking me some questions, and I could feel the tears coming. I'm like, I don't know that part of her story yet. I don't know that yet. And I was panicked because I'm like, I want to know, I want to fight for her. And after I explained to him why, and then he paused after a minute. He looked at me and he said, I just want to thank you. Like, my wife and I want to thank you because I'm a product of the foster care system.
Oh my goodness.
And I was adopted, and we have a passion for that. And I remember in that moment, like all of my own, like, Lord, how, what? I don't know. I'm not equipped. Just stopping and realizing it was like the Lord was just like, this is my story. Like, there's not a moment in any part of it that I am not working. This side note. And I would go from there to the PICU, holding her with wires and tubes and crying and saying, God, I'm not the right mommy. I'm not the right mommy. I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And that would lead to the journey through the halls of the hospital, and encounters with doctors that have been in her care that told me stories that looked at me it was just this beautiful ongoing picture. There were so many of those that it's the remembering. It was the remembering in the moment, like in the moment as they're happening, God saying, stop. Be still. Remember what I'm doing. I'm doing more than you can ask or imagine. I'm doing more than you can see. This is not about this moment. And then it's me surrendering that to say, this is your story, which is how Bella's story became more known. We surrendered outward. This was not for us alone. And then it became, in the aftermath, in the darkness, is to fight to remember. And sometimes it was just, I couldn't remember anything. It was just remembering that he's held us to this point. And now it is looking at those particular moments, and there's so many more of them that it's just like, wow. And, maybe in heaven one day, he allows us to glimpse like all the ripples, all of the places that how we walked our journey or what he did. And we won't even be able to comprehend it, but there are glimpses he does give us. And so we have to constantly fight to look back and remember, and then trust he's still doing that, and he will continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think when we get to heaven, we'll see all of those things.
I do too.
It just, I look forward to that. Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, you and your husband, Scott, are going to be starting a While We're Waiting support group in your part of the country. They're in Winter Garden, Florida. And I know you're just getting started. I don't think you've even had your first meeting yet.
No, we haven't gotten even set up the time yet.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, kind of what you have in mind?
Yes. So we went to our retreat in April, and that was absolutely God's timing, because I probably became aware in the last couple of years, but every time there was something came up, it didn't come to be. So I look at it now and I see where I've been in my healing and what he showed me in that time. And it was a beautiful experience. And specifically in the place that he had me and the stories around me, and the way that he could use something for affirmation for someone else. And so in talking with some of the facilitators, it was just that came up, how the process, what it looked like. Never would I have thought at that time, here's where the direction we would go. But for Scott and I both, it was just really clear. We feel like this is where the Lord's leading. So we walk that out. And it's also, I think, part of me and the PTSD and through the trauma is I'm a seeker. I need to find something, but what my heart wanted was Christ-centered, and what my heart needed in the trauma piece was just child loss. And there was nowhere. And there was nowhere in Florida that I could find, nowhere that was Christ-centered child loss group. So it was just this lost place. So I kept reading, researching, following where the Lord led. And then I found your ministry, and a lot of resources came to me that way, but I still wouldn't have ever thought that we would get here. But we've had several families in our church after us that have lost children. We end up in spaces of communicating, and it's the same desperate need. So after that, and in this place, I thought, this is where we're supposed to be. And so we were getting through this month and just moving through, but just knowing and just kind of like feeling that desperate place of me as a mommy looking back, and us as a couple, like, what a profound gift for people walking this place now to be able to say, hey, here's a safe place. And it is going to point you and remind you of hope, but it's also going to hold you and let you be where you are, and just remind you you're not alone. So yes, we are looking forward to getting that going.
Yeah, we're just excited about that. You all are going to be wonderful facilitators. And like you said, there are not any other While We're Waiting support groups in Florida. This will be the only one. We do have a retreat location in Florida now, near the Tampa area.
That's so wonderful. We're going to share that with a lot of people because that's so needed.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, the waiting list is already fairly lengthy.
Florida is
but
a
I always
big
encourage
state.
people. Yes. I do always encourage people to go ahead and sign up. If you go to the website and you look at that retreat and you think, oh man, that is a waiting list, sign up, because we get a lot of cancellations, and very often the people on our waiting list can get in. And even if you don't, if we schedule another one in Florida, which we anticipate doing, we never schedule a second one until we make sure the venue works well for us, then you're on the list, and we will contact you and say, okay, here's the new date, and you can get in. So I encourage people to sign up for that. And for your support group, our While We're Waiting support groups just meet once a month, and they're very kind of loosely organized, different from Grief Share in that, with Grief Share, you've got videos, you've got a workbook, it's 13 weeks, and it's very structured. The While We're Waiting groups are, there's a devotional, but there's not a big, complicated structure.
Right.
It's mainly just building community.
And I think that's what's
between
so needed.
Grieving parents. Yeah. A place to talk. And yeah. So we look forward to you getting started with that. That's exciting to have that to offer in Florida. So, all right. One last question I always like to ask, and you've talked a little bit about worship music already and the impact that it's had in your life. So I know that music is an important part of your grief journey. You want to share 2 or 3 songs that are on your playlist that are especially meaningful to you?
Yes, goodness. Music has been a journey because I'm a full immersive in worship music all the time. So when you go through a long journey in the trauma, it's hard sometimes. Like everyone else says, worship can be hard. So for me, I found myself just needing to just be in the lament and the place of just absolute truth and reassurance. So Shane, their Psalms, anything with Psalm 23, He Will Hold Me Fast. They do that version. So do the Gettys. And they have a Psalm 91. Another one is Scripture Lullabies. Now it sounds funny. I had Scripture Lullabies that I would play with Bellah, but it is just Scripture. I don't know if you've heard of that, and so for me, it was almost like going back to that just soft space of comfort and peace in a childlike faith. It was just comforting. Not big, not productive, but just, so I would turn on Scripture Lullabies, and in that there are Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. And of course, lots of people sing that one. That was one that held me. Lord, from sorrow's deep I call, Selah. You are my hiding place. I think I played on repeat because that's just when you're in that place. It's like I'm hiding within the refuge of His. I surrender all, not surprised. That was constantly just me.
Yes.
There's one by J.J. Heller, another one that does children's songs, but it's called I Believe in You. And it's not so much worship, but it is like that reminder we need to hear. But it's also one I would give to my girls in that sibling piece was a huge part of my heart, even in my own trauma. But even with them and then others, it's like just needing to hear that, like, hey, you're seen, you're going to be okay. I believe in you. You're not alone. And so that one, Dear Refuge of My Weary Soul, Indelible Grace Music, His Eyes on the Sparrow. So yeah, that's more than a few, but you get the gist. Like I'm definitely,
yes.
I love finding anything with the Psalms and just sitting in that truth of knowing it's okay where I am and He's with me, leading the way.
Yeah. Well, and I can see coming out of this journey of PTSD, you want music that's just scripture and simple and clear. I can see how that would be important.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing those. All right. So is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I would just like to just kind of acknowledge the space that you have recently added into the whole While We're Waiting ministry, sort of a separate entity, but the sibling lifeline. It has been such a blessing to see that space come up and to listen to the podcast that you did and just the heart behind it and how the lives of the siblings are being impacted. I know as a mom, for me, with my other girls, it's a whole different level of grief for the pain and the loss that you see your other kids go through, and knowing that you can't solve that and make that different. And you have to trust the Lord with that space. And it's also been a gap space where it's hard to see anything. And I think even my girls in their learning would say, do you know that like siblings are the forgotten grievers? Like that's been something. And I would say, yes, I know that. And so with other moms, that's a connection point. Like our kids are having to recognize their loss, but also their family as they know it, also their mom and dad as they know it. So, but then yet there's nowhere to go with that except for in prayer and in prayer. So that is a gift, such a needed gift for our families and for these siblings and even the newly grieving moms that have come alongside. It's just to be able to speak that encouragement to the mom in that place of how do I do this and how do I protect my, all of those things are wrapped up in it. So that is the biggest blessing. And I'm so thankful for it. Just in my own heart as a mom and for my girls and what I know they've had and other siblings and just what that will provide for so many families and so many siblings down the road.
Yeah, we are so honored to be able to host those retreats here at the Refuge in Arkansas. It's a much needed ministry. It's been needed for a long time. The Sibling Lifeline retreats are for siblings 18 and up, adult siblings, and they just had the third one. It just wrapped up yesterday, this weekend, and we're around the fringes. We came in on Saturday morning and helped cook, and just got to briefly meet the siblings that were here. We try to stay away because, we're parents. We don't belong.
Yes.
It's their space. And, but it's beautiful to see the connections that are being made between these siblings. There were siblings here from all over the country this past weekend. And the bonds that they were forming that we could see already on Saturday morning was just remarkable. And yeah, so we're very grateful for the Sibling Lifeline ministry. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So anybody that might be interested can look at that. Well, Julie, I have so enjoyed our conversation today. I've loved hearing about Bellah. Our girls were different ages, but there are a lot of similarities between their stories. And it's a tough journey to walk, but wow. The best truly is yet to come.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. As we wrap up the second half of my conversation with Julie South, I hope you've been encouraged by her honesty, her faith, and the way she continues to honor Bellah's legacy by walking alongside other grieving families. Julie's story reminds us that even in the hardest places, God's presence and His promises remain steady. If this conversation has spoken to you, I'd love for you to share it with another parent who may need encouragement today. You can also help others find the podcast by leaving a rating or a review wherever you listen. It really does make a difference. And if you'd like to learn more about the While We're Waiting ministry, please visit whilewe'rewaiting.org for information about retreats, support groups, and other resources for grieving parents. I love meeting listeners at While We're Waiting events, and I had the opportunity to do that at our retreat in Florida that we just had a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I know you heard us talk about it in this episode. We hope to schedule another one in Florida at some point in the future. We'd love to meet you there. So thank you for joining me for this powerful 2-part conversation with Julie, and I look forward to being back with you next week with another story of hope.